Hello, everyone. My name is Locke, and I am here on a very special episode of the Deep Dive podcast. I have a wonderful guest from an OG, Harvey Smith. Thanks for joining me, Harvey.
Thank you. I get it now. Deep dive, night dive.
Yes, it's all coming together. It's all, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. So I just wanted to get started. I know I'm pulling from way back when, but how did you end up coming to work at Origins, and can you kind of walk us your early career over there?
Yeah. So just before Origin Systems, um, just backing up a little bit, I
Mhm.
grew up, we all love video games like everybody.
Yeah,
And board games are not my thing, but pen and paper role playing games are definitely my thing.
nice.
And so as a kid of my, time period, I I played a lot of D&D and all that, but I remember on the Atari 2600 Adventure by Warren Robinette was this magical game. And I probably played it more than anything. And it's so simple by today's standards. But like it had recombinant elements and it kind of made an interactive narrative in a sense. And sometimes emergent shit happened, like where the bat swooped in and randomized you and grabbed something that you needed and dropped it in a really interesting spot, near a dragon or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Um, and the dragons had behavior like if I come into the screen and I see something worth guarding, I will guard it. And those are like rules based, systems based, even rudimentary, right? And so I feel like it like turned a key in my head somehow, in a way that D&D did and lots of other stuff did.
yeah.
Fast forward, I played a lot of games like Ultima Underworld, I remember. And I've talked about how it was just a life changing experience.
Mhm.
Everybody has their games like that for them. And, you know, it felt like you could solve problems creatively or at least approach things at your own pace and explore an underworld. It was gloomy and atmospheric. Um, Surprising things happened. And I was just enraptured. And when I got out of the military and I moved to Austin because I had friends living here, they kept telling me, like, as a person who thinks about games and won't shut up about them, um, and somebody who writes and
Yeah.
has an opinion about lots of things, you should come work at our company. And I was like, that's not a real skill. I had just spent 6 years doing satellite communication stuff. I was like, that's a real skill.
Yes. I was
What do you
doing big
mean?
boy
And
stuff.
yeah, and people would try to explain to me what it was like to work inside a video game company at the time, which 1993, kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so I started playing softball with them. I started playing Shadowrun in the boardrooms and the meeting rooms at night. Sometimes it would be a LAN party. We'd play some game together or whatever. And like I tried everything I could for 6 months. I've talked about this. That's one of the problems of having a long career is you feel like you've said everything. But
I
like then
know,
you
and there's
talk to
so
people,
many, there's so many good
people are like,
interviews of you chatting about this stuff, but
yeah, but people say like, "Oh, you said that 10 years ago." The people that listened to it back then, they've moved on, and there's a
right.
whole new group of people that are mildly interested in what you've got to
Totally.
say or whatever. But anyway, I did all that for 6 months and failed to get a job as a writer or game designer, which is kind of appropriate because I had no experience. But I came close a few times. It felt like, and then finally Richard Garriott had this skydiving party where I got invited as someone's plus one, and my friend Steve Powers, who's a game designer,
Mhm.
longtime game designer, and we jumped out of planes in San Marcos and parachuted down. I did all of this. I jumped out of a plane with them and still failed to get a job with them. And so at some point, the QA department had this ad that was like wanted tester $7 an hour, and you didn't even have a computer. You had a clipboard and a folding table in the back of the room and a 3DO. You probably don't even remember the 3DO, but it was like a device, like a
Yeah.
a console, yeah. And it was kind of cool, but it was expensive and had problems. But whatever. And so I flew these wing commander missions that I had previously pirated when I was much younger, and like wrote bugs, right? And anyway, I did well there. They liked me. My boss Kay Gilmore liked me. And one day I was walking through the department and I saw this guy who went on to work for on Halo, I think. And
Oh,
the QA
crazy.
department there was like a farm team. It was really cool.
Amazing.
Um, yeah, Starlong worked in that QA department and went on to do Ultima Online, like just pivotal games, right? But I was walking and I saw this game being played, and I don't know what it was, but even from like 15 feet away, I was like, I have to work on that. I don't know what that is, but I have to help that team make that, you know? And so I walked up and I said to the guy, Dan, I was like, Dan Orzalak, I was like, dude, what is this game? And he was like, it's called Citadel. And I was like, there's something about it. And he was like, it's made by the people that make Underworld. Isn't that your favorite game? And I was like, yes. And so I went to my boss and I was like, is he testing that? And she was like, no, he's just getting it running so we can look at it. And I was like, I literally said, who do I have to kill to get on that project?
Right.
And she was like, I had done a bunch of stuff for her, right, over the last 6 months or whatever. So she was like, okay, you don't have to kill anyone, you're on the project. And so by the end of that run, I had worked on System Shock in support of the team for like 10 months through floppy, and I was a lead tester by the end and all that. So it was like this really pivotal moment for my career. It was like boot camp game design, right? Like I
Right.
learned so much from those guys. And just to be clear, there are games like Deus Ex or Dishonored that I feel very confident saying I was a big part of the game
Yeah.
creatively or whatever. System Shock was not that. That
No.
was me being a support dude for as long as I could on a game that I truly loved with a team I truly loved and learned so much from. Like I have a call Friday with Doug Church. I think guy is still important in my life. I love that guy.
Nice. Nice.
He is a huge influence and like a great human being, I think. But there are all these other people there too, Rob Fermier and Artman and Mark LeBlanc, and just like
Hmm.
there were so many smart people there. It was a culture of people, some of whom had gone to MIT, many of whom were musicians, some of whom lived together. I went up there one time to the office and everybody was listening to the Nine Inch Nails. It was a very 90s moment. It was a very early 90s moment, you know. And you can feel that when you play System Shock. You know,
Yeah.
I was very close to Warren Spector, who's, you know, a mentor and I worked with for 9 years on different projects at different companies. And I remember there was some interview with him and Paul Neurath. Well, I think when Paul and Ned Lerner started their company, I think it was like Blue Sky, and you'd have to
Hmm.
ask somebody who was
Hmm.
there, but like they became Looking Glass, and I think it was a merger of like Ned's thing and Paul's thing, I think. But I think their first employee was Doug Church, which is like pretty good power move if you're going to start a video game company, in my
Right.
opinion. Um, and so there was this interview with them after Underworld where Warren or somebody, Paul or Warren, said, you know, they asked, "What are you going to do next?" And said, "Oh, Doug's been thinking about this cyberpunk game, you know, our science fiction game, whichever they called it,
Yeah.
you know." And it's like, so System Shock was just a special moment in time, I think, and I can't do it justice because I was on the Origin side in
Yep.
Austin with
Yep.
an A, while they made the game in Boston with a B. Um, but I just can't tell you how electric it felt for me. And the first, I don't know, 6 months or whatever I was on the project, it was all text with very little sound. You
Hmm.
could already tell the sound design was brilliant, but there were no voice files and stuff like that.
Right.
There was
Right.
the intro, like uh, the whole Tri Optimum like intro with
Yeah.
the all that stuff. Um, but even maybe that was text. I can't remember. Anyway, one day when we were finally, I think we had finalized the floppy. This is one of those moments in history where the plat or the trend we were in the trends a medium transmission or transition. God, I can't
Yeah.
speak. Um, where like we were going from floppy disk to CD, and it was like going to be a big deal, and everybody's going to have a CD drive, and it could store so much more. Why would you ever need more storage space than a CD-ROM? You know,
Right.
and anyway, I can't tell you how mind blowing it was to install the game, get the new build, a game that I've been playing for 6 months that I truly love, that I knew every inch of
Yeah.
Citadel
Back to
Station,
front. Yeah.
and suddenly all this voice and all
Audio
this
comes in.
sound and
Yeah.
Shodan, and like you play an audio log and you can hear the guy giving the like last minutes of his life while things are screeching and guns are firing in the far distance, and it
Yeah.
sounds right, you know. And it was just like holy shit, I get chills just thinking about that first
Yeah,
time I played
I've
it. I
got
was like,
tingles on the back of my spine
yeah,
because you're taking your think about how much work you got to do in your tabletop stuff, right? That's doing so
mhm.
much brain power, creating that imagery, and then you're
Yeah,
like you're doing that already with your System Shock stuff. You're like filling in all the gaps, and then all of a sudden you have this audio coming in and just giving you this injection of like
right,
sensations. That's crazy.
right.
That's wild. It's wild.
And audio is so high impact,
Yeah.
people don't realize. Like, I remember there was this wacky Doug Church quote. It was the kind of thing that, like, once you understand it, it makes perfect sense and it sounds like something Doug would have said. But at the time was like, what the fuck? And it was, I think he said something like, um, lighting is the music of sound or something like
Yeah.
that. And it was like things have a disproportionate effect on the mood and the experience, like
Hmm.
the same way the the same way in film, like the audio, like it makes everything super rich. Lighting in video games does that
Hmm.
too, to the mood and all.
Hmm.
And I just feel like audio itself is so, audio and lighting, they're so powerful. But audio, if you made a new peripheral and you said, hey, you've been testing this game for 6 months, we're going to put you in the chair and now we're going to connect it. It has a special massage mode. Like as you're playing,
Hmm.
it's massaging you in time with like the experience of the game. It's like that would be less powerful than
Yeah.
audio, right? Because
Yeah.
audio is simultaneously not there and yet makes the whole world. It's just so incredible.
Absolutely.
And Eric Brosius, who I think I've met like one time, he came to Ion Storm one time, and he was standing in the kitchen making coffee, talking to somebody. Um, but I've worked with his wife Terry quite
Hmm.
a bit. Like we worked on Dishonored together, and she's amazing in her own right with her writing and I
Hmm.
don't voice work and all the audio stuff as well. But Eric has a touch for sound effects and room tone and things like that. And so System Shock was just utterly transformed by this move to CD. And I hope I'm not babbling too much, but it was
No,
just an
no, man.
exciting,
No, it's
exciting
important.
time in my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I walked away. I mean, like the last month of the project, there was a rendering guy named James and Doug who shared the big open cubicle area
Hmm.
that we had in QA. And just sitting there listening to their observations about games, they were like real industry people.
Yeah.
Like Doug had worked on software prior to that. I think he worked for DARPA or something, right? So they're like, in a way that I was just like a poor kid from Texas who had
Hmm.
stumbled into video games. And I was there because I liked game design, I like narrative, I like small team leadership, I like
Yeah.
writing. Um, and so for me, it was like the perfect place to be. But
Yeah.
I had so much education to catch up on. It's not like today where kids go to UCLA or Full Sail or wherever they go. It was like really by virtue of the fact that those guys in Boston had gone to MIT and sort of applied that to game technology was like a pretty rare, interesting moment, I think. But and we all benefited from it. But anyway, that is how I got into Origin essentially, and how I lucked into working on System Shock and learning from this great, amazing team, some of whom I'm still close to, and
Hmm.
all of the ones I worked with, I think off and on, I see them and I love saying hi, and it's like, what are you doing right now?
Yeah.
They were all amazing people. I will say one other thing, like I was so excited about everything that like I was doing all this extra work. Origin, it's hard for people to believe now, but we had an old timey metallic punch clock. We would
Yep.
punch
You
our
clock in.
cards.
Yeah.
And this was like right before apps for
Hmm.
all that, right?
Hmm.
But I remember the day that I punched the clock and it had triple digit for my hours. It was like 102 or whatever. Like
Crazy.
we worked a lot. Sometimes I fell asleep under the desk. And if we were crunching, like it's not healthy. It doesn't actually make the game go better, but it's what we believed at the time.
Yeah.
And we were all 20 something, right? So um I'm sad to think about the life that I missed, but it also was like going to college or working on a movie or whatever. Like that's a very compressed, high energy, time anyway, so I have conflicting feelings about it. I would never want it to make anyone else do that
Yeah.
now,
I
but
I think,
like,
yeah, it was a time and place though too, right? Because you're y- at the same time, I had a similar experience at a studio where when everyone has bought in, and I'm not using that as like a brainwash pejorative term, I'm like, everyone's bought in, everyone sees that this is special, so everyone's okay with doing this. Again, we
and
fast
Origin
forward.
Origin
Yeah.
felt like that in
Yeah.
general,
You
for
feel
all its
good about doing
problems.
that. You're like, no, I'm hitting
Yeah,
100 hours, not by like, oh, I have to get this.
yeah.
It's like, no, everyone felt passionate about that. And,
Mhm.
we have, it's obviously different today, but there are situations where you can be like, I feel really good about this. If I just hit another 2, 3 hours, there's nuance to that.
Yeah, I
There's
have a
nuance to that.
right. I strongly agree, and I'm not an advocate for crunch.
Mm-mm,
I do everything
mm-mm.
I can to
We
avoid
know
it.
how dangerous it is.
Um, right, but I have the kind of nuanced opinion that the internet likes to destroy around this, which is
Totally.
like when I wrote a novel, I burned the candle at both ends. I was so excited. I was staying
Yes.
up till midnight. I was voluntarily just ignoring huge chunks of my life. I have a friend here in town, Elizabeth Spear, who used to run a little film company and make her
Mhm.
indie films. And she used to just kill herself during the
Yeah.
production of a film,
Yeah.
and the whole crew is going and everybody's firing um, and I have, like I said, I have, it's a nuanced view because it's not good and under the wrong circumstances, people get abused, etc.
Mhm.
But I also further have a nuanced opinion there, which is like, if I like I'm kind of glad I did that when I was in my 20s and I had endless energy.
I agree.
And
I agree.
if I had not, if I had said, you know what I really need to do is do more breathing exercises and chill out, and like, I
Do
would
that when
not
you're
have
40.
actually, I don't think I would have developed the skills that I needed to like do the next things that I wanted to do. So there's a window. I know this sounds like, oh, he's an advocate of,
No,
I'm
no,
not
no.
an
The
advocate of
goal of
crunch.
this isn't
But
Harvey Smith condones crunch. It's like, no. It
but
Think
what I
of
was
the
going to say
talent.
is,
Yeah, sorry, finish your thought. Yeah.
no, it's okay. The there's a it's harder to say to people because most people are younger.
Mhm.
It's just crazy because you never feel, except you're the age that you feel like you ought to be. Like, everybody probably walks around thinking they're 35 or something all the
Mhm.
time. Like, when they're younger, they probably kind of act like that, and when they're older, they probably
Mhm.
there's some middle point. But like, it is true more and more now that almost every room I walk into, I'm the oldest guy in the room.
Yeah.
And maybe I
I've
need to go hang out with more old people. That would help me probably. But I'm 58 now, right? Which is, it sounds wrong to even say. And I will just tell you that it is true that you have a narrow window of time when you're not under your parents' control, and if you're lucky, you have parents, etc.,
Mhm.
yada yada. But you're not in the control of like the young life, with all the demands of that. You're not just like killing yourself at school or whatever.
Mhm.
You don't yet have an elderly parent you
Responsibilities.
have to take care
Yeah.
of, a mortgage that's on in danger of killing you. Like, uh, you lost your job because of whatever. You have a health problem. Some people have kids. All of that. Like, that shit is real, and that just consumes every hour of the day at some point. And there's this window of time, and I think for most people, it's just like, hey, party, socialize, learn your skills, have a good life, take care of yourself, etc., is the right advice. But there are some of us for whom, and I know Rafael Colantonio is this guy. He makes albums, he
Mhm.
makes games, um, you know, he works out constantly, travels the world. He's like living his best life right now, but he will say the same thing, that like, there was a window of time where if I wanted to become, when he wanted to become the best guitarist he could
Mhm.
become, learn how to write songs, music theory, get bodies of songs together, play live, get a company formed, make Arx Fatalis was like their
Yep.
early game, onto Dark Messiah, onto Dishonored with me, and Prey on his own, while I made Dishonored too. Like there's just a time window for some people. Like, I kind of feel like if you're a super driven musician or movie maker or game maker or writer, Um, it's just different for some people. I remember there was this somebody said something that was like, I don't want to say that. That sounds judgmental. Anyway, um,
It's a safe space here.
yeah, I know, but it
It's
sounds
all good.
dickish. It
No, it's all
like
good.
someone said something like, um, you know, make sure you get lots of sleep. If you feel stressed, stop and analyze why. Talk to people about it. Like, don't go too hard on yourself. Take long walks, etc., and you will live the best life, the calmest life. However, that's not how great people think. And I remember like how miserable I felt hearing that. Not that I think I'm great, by the way, but like
I think
driven
you're great.
people might
I
have been
think you're
a
great.
better. Well, thank you, but driven people might have been. And it's not that I'm saying that's healthy. It's not. But it's just a conversation I have with Raph all the time. It's like there was no other way for me. I
Yep.
feel like in my case, I had so much trauma that I was like trying to connect with people. I was trying to do something where someone would tell me that it was good,
Yeah.
and it's like, again, not healthy. In the same way, Batman is not a healthy psychological um, you know, it's like there's some people, my filmmaker friend or Raph or me, like that there's a
Uh,
window of time that if you don't maximize it, you're too tired later or you're too
yeah.
busy or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah.
anyway,
I feel you, man.
or
That's
the
yeah.
or kind of to your point, like, or the culture has changed. There was a window of time when you could be blue sky about games and stuff, and
Yeah.
now it's like much more locked down unless you're indie. Like, so there may be like a moment in time, like if you were a musician in the mid 80s and you were in Athens, Georgia, you're not going to move away because
No.
you're like, oh shit, it's happening here
Yeah.
right now. Anyway, I know some of that is probably offensive,
I
especially given modern sensibilities, which I strongly agree with as a progressive person. I just think it's nuance and it's worth thinking about all of that if you're a
I
young person. I have a comment on that because that's so fascinating to me. I try to sleep as much as I can, but sometimes I think I get 6 hours of sleep on average for
yeah.
many, many, many years,
Yeah.
and and I sometimes wake up at 4 or 5, and I'm fucking
Yeah.
wide awake.
Let's go.
Sometimes my eyes open and I'm sleepy, and I'm like, time to go back to bed. Other times I open my eyes and I'm working on this book of D&D monsters, the 128 D&D monsters. It's a
Right
giant
now?
book.
Right now?
Yeah, it's coming out this year. I
Woohoo,
didn't
let's
mean
go.
I didn't mean to be I didn't mean to be this into it, but I have unique art for all of them and
Oh man.
mechanics and lore and all that stuff. So I'm very excited about it. Sometimes I literally would wake up when I was really working on it. Now I'm just editing. Sometimes I would wake up at like 5 in the morning in mid thought with an idea for the book because I was so steeped in it. And I would immediately get up, go upstairs to my office, and just like start working on it. Anyway, this is all a big aside.
No, it's
Um,
not. This is all
yeah,
pertinent to work-life balance and
right.
because it leads
But or
into probably how you run your studio, probably how you operate as a creative. I think it's important to hear this, especially in this day and age, because yeah, the farm team comment was super important because like how serendipitous was that? And like in what like stratosphere do we ever see that? Like it's crazy that there was that much talent in this space, you know? Like that what a amazing
yeah,
moment in
I
time.
kind of wonder if that's because there was just so little um, in the way of game companies in Austin at the time. There were just not that many companies, um, and most cities there just weren't that many companies, right? So in Austin, Origin was not the only game in town, but it was one of the only games in town, and certainly. I also just want to say, like when I was a little kid, I got to go to winter camp and summer camp every year.
Mhm.
Um, Not because we had money, we were very poor, but I was in scouts and it was sponsored by a church. And it was
Yep.
amazing because we'd go for 2 weeks in the winter and 4 or 5 weeks in the summer if you were on staff. And I'll never forget walking around And instead of the hostility of high school or middle school, whatever I was at the time, middle school, I guess, where like you might get thrown against the wall or like
Hmm.
whatever. Like it was very rough back then, especially in blue collar towns.
Yeah.
Like you're walking around and these kids are friendly and accepting, and they're talking about Doctor Who, or they're talking about Ursula K. Le Guin's fiction, or just remember. And then at night they're playing D&D, and it was just like it was like Harry Potter going to wizard school or whatever.
Yeah, man.
It was like mind blowing like that. And that was recreated for me many years later after the military, because I walked in the doors at Origin, and like, uh, some guy is having an argument with somebody else about the writer Brubaker, who did the Captain America run with Winter Soldier in it
Hmm.
in the 90s or whenever that was, um, whenever that was. Maybe that's a bad example because maybe that happened later. I don't know. But anyway,
They're
you know
talking
what I
about
mean?
nerd
Like,
shit, they're talking about,
yeah,
there's like, these are
right.
my people. And
And while I think there's huge problems with fandom and nerd culture and all that too, we have to be ever vigilant. We have to make things better. But like sometimes by focusing so much on what's wrong, we miss the fact that this is kind of special. Cultures are special. And
yeah.
when you've been starved for affection or connection, or meaning, when you were the odd kid, intellectually or sexually or whatever, and you just didn't fit in. And then you find this place where, oh my God, this feels like my people. It doesn't get enough attention, I think, like that's magical. And one of my favorite films of all time is Cameron Crowe's Almost Famous. And
Nice.
I think I have a nostalgia for the time period and being the younger kid around the older people that really knew it. And also a scene. Like right now, it just feels culture is so divided. There's
It's
nobody
crazy.
curating it. I don't think gatekeeping is necessarily great, but it used to be like the labels would release a certain number of albums.
Hmm.
Beggar's Banquet has the following albums. And therefore, if you like their style and their taste, you gravitate to that. Nowadays, shit is just scattered. Everybody downloads a song or plays Spotify or whatever.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
no like unified culture around an event. Like, when the film The Day After came out, everybody in my high school was talking about it, right? It became
Yeah.
a touchstone.
Yeah.
Um, and so, in that same way, I just feel like um, having a culture and having a moment, and some periods are better than others, right? Like the 90s were amazing, the 70s were amazing in film,
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
60s for literature and science fiction were amazing. But like, and I don't know, there's great stuff being made now. I'm definitely not that old guy that's saying like things used to be better. That's not true. Things are generally better today, but there are definitely cultural movements. Like you just look at style, the way
Yep.
men dress today versus, like 1976 or something. It's like, um, anyway, I don't know. Pretty far afield here, but
Love it.
Origin, the point is Origin
Was that
was like that,
safe
right?
space?
Yeah.
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 I feel you, man. I ran a camp for 8 years, and coming from a small town and then going to a place where there's people that had different perspectives than your small town.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
like I
great.
feel you on those special connections and having those spaces and being able to be exposed to like
Right.
not just what you grew up in.
I mean, you may or may not know, but I've said that same thing. Like everywhere, I grew up in a chemical plant town, and you
Yeah.
either became a shrimper, or you worked in the plant, or you had some lesser job like convenience store or
Yeah.
whatever. And I don't think people understand. Like, I am a person of privilege in some sense, for sure. And I want to recognize that. But like, I don't think people understand. Like, if you grew up and your mom was a lawyer and your dad sold real estate, or your dad was a dentist and your mom was an accountant or whatever, you grew up in the waters of professional people. I don't care where you were.
Mhm.
Could have been in Scranton, Pennsylvania, or whatever it
Just
is.
through
Like,
osmosis, that's your
just through
worldview. Yeah.
osmosis, right? And then by contrast, if you grew up and your mom was, well, my mom was 15 when I was born, right?
Mhm.
So she wasn't doing anything really and getting in trouble.
Surviving.
And the dad went to work at the chemical plant and drank some, that was his life basically. Not entirely, that's
Mhm.
unfair. But um, but like that was a common experience for Freeport when in the 70s and 80s. And you don't know that these things are jobs that you could go do. You don't
Yeah.
know the path. I never went to college, or I did go to college, but spottily. I never
Yep.
got a degree, is a better way to put it.
Sure.
Um, and and so I think the point of this, actually, now that I think about it, is that it is hard to convey to people, despite the privilege of being born male, whatever, being white, despite all the ways I got lucky. Games like this, making games, getting close to that creative power, the creative collaboration, the spark, is so important to me. And it may be more important to me than it is to most people because of some things, right? Um, my parents were super wealthy. They sent me to Dartmouth, whatever the fuck.
Hmm.
I went into the film program at such and such. I ended
Sure.
up at Juilliard, and my uncle was famous film director so and so. So I've been in the business for a long time. Um, you know, and now I make films, and films are very important to me. That's true too. Like
Yep.
I
Both
appreciate
things
the
can be
fact
true at the same time.
I appreciate that that person got that opportunity and is making good films and all that. That's awesome. Go you. But man, like it may be the harder earned, the further walked, the less likely that outcome is. Like the more it might just feel like, no, you don't understand. This is, and now I'm like 31, 32, 31 years into it or
Right.
whatever. So if I walked away and did something else for the rest of my life, like I already feel like it's done for me what I couldn't have dared hope that it would do for me, which is like 30 years of above average pay and above average benefits, 30 years of working around smart people,
Yeah.
from musicians to engineers to artists. Like I work with this artist right now who's simultaneously like steeped in trippy 60s and 70s fantasy art and also knows classical painters and stuff like that. And that's not uncommon for my role. Like I'm super lucky.
That's
And
crazy. I'm so
it's
jealous of
just
that,
crazy,
dude.
right? Yeah. And it's like every area there's something like that. And I've been able to do that for 3 decades, and it has just changed me. And I'm so lucky.
Yeah.
But anyway, and that's another just a long-winded way of saying those early game companies like Looking Glass or Origin, they were special places, and those games were very meaningful, especially to some people. And games are transport, they're escape, they're mastery, there's overcoming fear. If you were a kid in a traumatic situation,
Yep.
dealing with a lot of trauma and fear, being able to overcome your bullies or your monsters, like in a game like Thief or
Yeah.
uh, dare I say Dishonored, Deus Ex. Um, that is very powerful stuff. And those little cultures that formed in those places, for all their flaws, for all the things you could say bad about them, they also were fucking magical. And right now it feels like we have nothing
Yep.
sometimes. That quote from your mentor is great. Creating something is a net positive. Like, man, I feel like I'm going to internalize that. That's great. And
I
and the reason is otherwise you feel silly, right? Like I
yeah.
started working on this monster book, and every now and then I take my turn. I'm lucky again to play with some amazing D&D
Yeah.
aficionados, and every now and then I take my turn running the games for a year. And so I'm kind of gearing up for the new one. And I had a handful of monsters in the last campaign that were unique. And so I was like, oh, I'll just add a few more, give them something new. And I started, and I realized suddenly I had a build up of like 25 of these. And I was like, how many monsters were in the original monster manual? And it's like, I think it's 300 or something. I could be
Yeah. It's a
wrong, but
lot.
like,
Yeah.
but it's a lot, but it's not a huge book. And so I was like, I'm close to actually being able to make my own monster book. And so then I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to make sure each one has a game mechanical hook and is
Cool.
otherwise as simple as possible. So the filter is kind of like, bend, don't break the rules, do some unique hook, be simple otherwise, and fit into the Harvey style filter.
Sick.
And that has been so gratifying. And like
Dude.
your thing about, every now and I'm at a party and I'm surrounded by people that are like non-game people, and like, oh, this guy, I have this friend, he does legal work for disenfranchised groups that can't afford it, pro bono work.
Mhm.
He knows a shit ton about city infrastructure and how poverty happens and how people get screwed by the system. And he's super sharp. He's a legal mind. And it just feels like what he does is so important.
Yeah,
And
I
so he's
hear
like,
you.
hey, what are you working on right now? Well, I'm trying to get a studio off the ground, a new one, but also I'm working on this book of monsters. And
Uh,
it's like,
Crazy.
just because you're not Jim Jarmusch or something, it's
No.
like your work is going to be interesting to somebody. And that what triggered me saying that, by the way, was what you said, which is, what's the point of this book? Like, I am going to publish this book and let people buy it, and
Yes.
I'll probably make a PDF at some point or whatever. But like, I want a hardback that I can hold and look at it. So
Oh man.
the part of the point is just holding the artifact you made,
Yes.
whether it's your favorite framed sketch you made or whatever. It's just holding it is important. And so I want that. But second, the juice for me actually is like, let's say there's 10 people in the world who buy this book, and they five of the DMs get off their lazy asses and they use one of the monsters. And one out of the five times the encounter is memorable. And so somebody somewhere out there, there's some group of people that were like, do you remember the night that fucking thing, what was it called? An Amphibious? Oh yeah. Remember when it attacked us and it
Yes.
ate the horses' hearts? Oh, that was fucked up. We did this and this emergent thing happened. And then, oh God, so and so got carried off. Because remember, it can spear you and carry you off. And it's like, if somebody has that experience, and I got to be the thing that sort of like opened the door for them, set
Yeah.
the ground, turned them on in that way creatively.
Net
That is
positive.
that's it. And it's just funny to think about musicians because they step onto a stage and just hit a chord and the whole fucking crowd lights up.
Right?
And they get that instantly, I guess.
Yes.
And writers and people like that are like, in the basement for
Yeah.
years, hey, 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 this is gonna kill
It's
people. This is gonna be so good. And then like many years later, in a place you'll never go, with people you'll never meet, somebody's like, wow, that's pretty cool. And it's like that is so fucking indirect. Like in terms of creative payoff, it's insane
yeah,
to compare the two. But that is the juice for me, is that
I
that
love
some
it.
people might be using the monsters out there and having a good time. I don't know.
I
So
love it, dude. Well, I know that I can sell at least 5 copies to my tabletop group, so
yeah,
appreciate that. You've surrounded yourself in the immersive sim, really paved the way since the 90s to this day in that space. What lessons are you taking from your time with, System Shock, Deus Ex, Ultima? Even Ultima has had such an impact on your career.
yeah.
How are you utilizing
So
that today? Or like what lessons are you taking, or what lessons should other people take from that legacy?
I need to go back and play System Shock 2 because I only remember it in absolutely adoring. I played it twice.
Yeah,
It was one of my
it's
favorite games, but like probably am the target audience, right?
I
So I
think
need
so.
to
I think
when
it's
they
time. Yeah.
I would always say that, like, even though I'm the person here talking to you today, video games are, it's cliche to say video games are about the team.
Mhm.
But when you stop and you think about Dishonored and you think about Sebastian Maton and Jean-Luc Monet and all the engineers that we had, the really talented engineers under Hugues Tardif, um, you know, and Dinga Bakava joined us, and Ricardo Bear was on the team, all these incredible people. And of course, Rafael Colantonio
Yeah.
and Julian Roby from Wolf Eye were central figures. And it is a bit of a cliche to say it's about the team, even though you're talking to one person. But the part I would add to it that is maybe more nuanced is that it's about institutional knowledge.
Mhm.
So, like, it's not just that you have a team, it's that team has been there contiguously through some learning experiences, through
Yeah.
some failures and successes. Even if you lose a person, you add somebody else. Even if you add somebody else with the right mindset, that's more important. Like, we literally got rid of people along the way who were talented, very talented, with great track records, who'd signed up 8 games because their mindset about interactivity and player control, player agency,
Mhm.
and pacing was totally wrong.
Right.
Like, not to name any particular people,
No,
but
no.
like, imagine you worked on a brilliant game like Devil May Cry.
Right.
Your sensibilities for what is the right call on working on something like Deus Ex or Dishonored would be completely wrong.
Right.
Just like if I went and tried to work on Devil May Cry, I'd probably
Right.
fail. I'd
Right.
probably piss the fans off because I don't, I don't have the right sensibilities for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So it's very much about institutional knowledge. Uh, Even though people are passing the baton, like Dingo Bakaba is at Arcane Leon now. I remember when Raf and I interviewed him,
Sick.
and he's amazing, and he's carrying the baton there now, right? So that's one of the reasons when an entire studio gets axed, it's like the worst thing in the world because it's the burning of the library,
Yep.
in a very
Yep.
real way. Shit is not documented, nor could you really, you know.
Everyone's too
But
busy,
anyway,
like
yeah, yeah. There's that, but also, would a new crowd of people be able to pick up a book, read it, and become
no,
like a Looking Glass or an
no,
Origin? Or
no,
I don't think
no.
so. Yeah, there's everybody would like to think so. Like, oh, if you just had the right training
It's not
manual
the
and
same
HR was on
vibe.
top
It's
of it,
not the same vibe,
dude.
dude.
We're
No.
talking about creative shit and it's magic, and you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yes. So in any case, yeah. So the lessons, like, I think they're just the tenets of why we make immersive sims. It's like a well realized space that meets your expectations. If you go into someone's office and there's no trash can, it feels wrong, even if you didn't notice
Yep.
it. If there's not some shit on the whiteboard that someone just left and half erased, it doesn't feel quite right. Um, there's a completeness to not reality, but like expectation, plausible environment. Even if you're on Mars, it doesn't have to be reality, but
Yeah.
it has to be meet expectation and be plausible, right? Be coherent also. Um, and so there's that. And then there's also something about how to solve your problems. Like, we've said it many ways over the years, but they're not key lock problems generally. I mean, sometimes there's literally a key in a lock, but more often we don't want to reward you for how you solve the problem, just that you solved it. Like, we have this theoretical model in Deus Ex where if there's a room with, the thing you need in it, and we're going to give you experience points to level up too. We don't give you experience points for picking the lock.
Yeah.
We put the experience points in the middle of the room in an invisible trigger and just say, like exploration bonus or whatever.
Hmm.
And I don't care if you cheated your way through the wall through some glitch, or if you crashed through the skylight, or you picked the lock, or you blew it up with a grenade or whatever. The fact that you got there, however you chose to get there,
Yes.
and because you might have come up with a way to get there that we didn't anticipate. And so there's something about the sort of player creativity, player, like, what makes sense to you, what is your north star, and then systems that cater to that, actually. Like, Deus Ex, like, I took the aqua lung and the swimming skill to max, and then I took the weapon mods that let my weapons work underwater. And
Hmm.
every time I see water, I jump in the fucking water.
Yeah.
And if the level designers didn't like provide a hatch or a moon pool or a sewer or something that lets that player, and also a threat, by the way,
Yep.
some hostile fish or scuba guards or whatever, like, you're not catering to that player, right?
Yeah.
So, and some exploration bonuses down there, yeah. Also, like, there's just a way of thinking about it, which is like
Yeah.
about the player, about their creativity, about their solutions, how they think they should go about this, right? Do you want to be big rocket launcher dude blowing shit up, or do you want to hack the cameras, watch people through the cameras, turn the security systems against them, and feel indirectly powerful? Those should be that should be up to you.
I
And
love
there's
it.
another thing about pacing. Like, I've always given the example of, like, some games are like a roller coaster. You can't control the speed, you can't control the direction. You're on it, hanging on for dear life, and it's curated perfectly to take you by jump scares or puffs of air, big drops, whatever. There's roller coaster as a design, and I really respect that. That's amazing. I love roller coasters. There's also the time when I was like 13, and me and two friends broke into the abandoned house at the corner. There was
Yep.
an old Victorian house that people had told us horror stories about for years. That, like, this beautiful young couple were getting married, and their parents gave them this gorgeous Victorian manor. And the month before the wedding, she fell off a horse and broke her back and was paralyzed from the waist down. And he literally married her anyway and carried her over the altar. And, like, and then he died, and she lived in a wheelchair for years and it was haunted. I don't know. I don't know if there's any truth to that whatsoever, but a block from my house, on a dead end that was a Victorian mansion, like some shit out of Edward Gorey or whatever, right?
Yes.
And so we went down there, no one lived there, and we went in. And just to get through the foyer or whatever, the entryway, probably took us 10 minutes
That's
because we were
wild.
like standing there breathing. Suddenly your breathing is heavy,
You can
like
hear
when
it.
you've
You
been
can
in a
hear
car
yourself
wreck.
breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're looking at each other and you hear a sound upstairs. Is it an opossum? What is it that
Yeah.
lives up here? Everything is fucking dusty. And then you start to move around and a board breaks or whatever. It's like, it is so powerful. We spent like an hour in there, maybe 30 minutes or an hour. It felt like forever. And then something happened that panicked us and we all ran
You're
out.
out.
But before we did, there were magazines on little dusty tables from like fucking years before. And even if a magazine is from like 8 years before, this place is a time capsule, you know?
Crazy.
Um, and so
Wild.
games could be one or the other, right? And there are great games in both camps, the roller coaster or exploring the abandoned house. And we've always strived, wanted to make games like exploring the haunted
Yeah.
house.
The
And
abandoned
so
house.
that's the other thing is the pacing. And I'll tell one last anecdote. I've told it
Yeah. Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
but I love it so much. Is that when we finally let someone outside the team play Deus Ex, Warren brought in his writer musician wife Caroline, who's an amazing person also. And we all, the directors and leads, sat on the back of Warren's office, and she sat there playing. And we occasionally, I think our assistant director Chris Norden would tell her like, "Oh, let me run this first. Okay, now here's the mouse isn't working. Hold on." And so it was like really crude, you know. And she sat there and she played the game for like 30 minutes, and she just stayed on the dock at Liberty Island. And she would jump in the water and she would throw things in the water and she chased a seagull and she swam under the dock and chased a fish. And she tried to get into this cage full of some resources down there. And then she jumped back up on the dock and ran around and knocked the trash can around or something. I don't remember exactly what happened. She did all that kind of stuff. And we were sitting there and I remember us being like, we fucking failed. We failed because she's not
She's not
racing
hitting the
in.
objectives.
She's not like talking to Paul Denton.
Yeah.
She's not picking her weapon. She's not fighting. She's not sneaking. And when she turned around and Warren was like, "What do you think?" She was like, "I love it. This is my favorite game ever." And we were like, "What the fuck are you talking about? You just fucked around on the dock." And you know, she went on to play more of it, of course, but it's like there was something about player pacing
Yeah.
and letting them fuck with things
Yeah.
that is just inherently pleasurable. And sometimes games forget that you're so anxious that you're
Dude.
not being exciting, that you're
Oh,
rushing
dude.
things, you know. And it's like the immersive sims, they need a little more of that excitement every now and then, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes some players hit that and they're just like, I don't understand, what do I do here? But once you get hooked and you're like futzing with things or watching things, observing things, experimenting with things, that is really powerful.
For
If we, yeah, keep doing your work. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
If we had more time, like all of the things I mentioned could be supported by examples. Like the whole, like, are things there that you would expect to be there? And that's part of the power. I'll never forget reading about, I think in System Shock 1, I don't remember the specifics, but there's like a head of security or something. And you read about him off and on. I might be mixing three characters. I hope I'm
Yeah.
not. But like, and you read about him and what happened to him and where he was headed and all that. And then at some point you find his head,
Yeah.
you know, and it's like,
And it's a usable
you know,
item.
and it's a usable
Yeah.
item, and like it feels that it should be where it was and that it should be in the world. And like there's a little joke there that he's head of security, you know. So like um it was just, by the way, System Shock, if I could say one thing about it,
Yeah.
is it was like games as intellectual narrative or something, right? Because it's like a very smart part of this is Austin Grossman. Like I've worked with Austin several times, and I think he's a little bit the secret sauce here, some. But like the fact that you know everything is layered with these science fiction allusions
Mhm.
from all your favorite works of science fiction at that time, even to 0451 being Fahrenheit 451, the Bradbury reference. It's just smart, and it feels good to like not to like, hey, I got that reference, but like to be steeped in something that is like got some depth and some
Yeah.
humor and some like, you know,
layers to it. Yeah.
Dimension. Yeah.
Dimension and layers.
I
Yeah.
also I should end on this anecdote.
Hey,
Actually, I made a branch in my career. Was I was either going to stay at Origin for a little bit longer, and I ended up staying for a while and getting a project canceled and going out to a startup in Silicon Valley with some ex-Looking Glass people. But at that moment, I could have instead left to go work at Looking Glass, which probably would have put me on System Shock 2 eventually, or
mhm.
Thief or something. But like, it was for Terra Nova, a really great game by Artman and a team there.
I made the trailer for that when Nightdive re-released it. I have a special spot for Terra Nova.
I love it. Yeah, the mission design, the mechs are coming across the
Yeah.
bridge. You have to protect the convoy, but also you
Yes.
have to deploy some of your guys to blow the bridge, or the mechs will get across the bridge and destroy everything. That kind of mission design to this day is like, I fucking love it. But
Yeah.
anyway, there's a lesson there in Terra Nova about mission design. But anyway, I went up to Boston to interview, and I went to lunch with the guys, and we were coming back from lunch, and we got to the front door, which had a key code on it in the hallway, and Artman was about to punch it in, and he stepped back. And because I was interviewing, it was high pressure. These guys are
Yeah.
really smart. They went to MIT. They made
Yeah.
my favorite games of all time. And Art is about to enter the code, and he goes, "Wait, Harvey, you do it." And I was just like, I realized in the split second this was a test,
Oh
you know.
man.
And so I entered 0451, and the door opened, and it was like Art was like, "Good," and I was just like, "Oh my god, the relief I feel is palpable right now," you know. And it's
I dude, what a note to end on. I appreciate your thoughts and sentiments, and those stories are just like I said, when as you're saying that, it's just like what a great anecdote for a time where like everyone's attention is 15 seconds. You know what I mean? And like,
TikTok, yeah,
let's take a minute to breathe and take it in and
right.
look at the magazine that the 3D artist has rendered for you. You know what I mean? Like, that's really cool.
Anyway, I really appreciate the time to talk to you.
Yeah,
And if
thank you so much, man.